Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. Today is Monday, March 11th, 2024. We are here for our weekly Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources work session. There are various topics on the agenda. We'll do some introductions and then I'll turn it over to the appropriate staff. So my name is John Kafalos, Commissioner from District 1, Chair, joined by Commissioner Shattuck McNally from District 3. Commissioner Kristen Stevens is not feeling well today, so she will not be joining us for this meeting. We also have our County Manager, Lorenda Volker. Lorenda, is there anything you'd like to say, or shall we just turn it over to Leslie? Great. Thank you, and thank you all for being here. Welcome.
All right. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Leslie Ellis, Community Planning Infrastructure and Resources Director. And I will actually kick us off with this first item. Last week, we added to the agenda an update for the Commissioners on the Livermore conversation and the request to do a character area plan. Rebecca is having some much needed a couple days off, so I'm covering on her behalf, and Matt Lafferty's here with me, and he can cover part of this item as well. So Rebecca and her team, including Matt, did a lot of work in the last week and a half since the conversation happened on the 29th of February to gather all the information and summarize from the community what we heard both at that meeting and then after that meeting with emails and information that came in. We had about 250 people attend a meeting in Livermore on the 29th and then some follow-up correspondence from that. And then on Friday, she sent out to the board a summary with a recommendation and then a summary of the comments and everything we heard, also to all of the contacts on the contact list from the meeting. So hopefully everybody who signed in and was interested got a copy of this recommendation and a summary from the meeting. And so we also have a skeletal web page at this point where we'll put information, the summary. It's not quite there yet, but it should be in the next few days or so, and we can use that as a landing page for information in general about the Livermore community, summaries, questions, and answers. And there's also a comment form that Rebecca sent out so that community members could send additional ideas or questions that they have to staff. So based on the mixed feedback that we heard, but with most people leaning toward not doing a plan at this point, and a lot of interest in the rural character of the area, some questions and concerns about increased development or commercial development that we mostly heard. At this point, staff is not recommending moving forward to do a character area plan. I think we can have some conversation about possibly doing some informational sessions with the community to address some of the questions that were raised in the meeting and in the emails, things like the water situation, traffic and safety on US 287, land use and development review process. Rebecca and Matt and team can certainly answer more questions. There's a few questions that we've heard already that I think we wanted to just provide some quick information to the board and to any members of the community who may be listening, because I think there's also still some questions about what precipitates a plan, how might one start, what kind of level of development can happen in the area now without a plan, just with the existing zoning. And so we thought it might be helpful also just to address a couple of those questions up front, and then we can certainly provide more information going forward. So one of the questions we heard is, can anybody submit a character area plan and start the process? What starts the process? I think we also heard questions along the lines of, is the community susceptible to higher density development if a plan isn't done? Like, is it necessary to have a plan in order to protect the area? And then we had a few questions about the status of the state and county properties that are out there too. So for the first question about anybody asking to do a plan, so the way that this planning process would work is any area plan as part of the community development work plan. And so the staff looks to the Board of County Commissioners to approve the work plan and give us direction on where to focus our resources. So if we get any requests from the community, we bring it to the board as part of the work plan discussion and then look for you to guide us in terms of prioritization. And as you've heard from Rebecca in previous discussions, we have some criteria that we look at. We usually have, limited staff capacity and funding for those types of things. And so we bring those to the board and we ask for your guidance on how to prioritize those things, as we've done in some previous work sessions. So in answer to the question about how does a character area plan start, that's how that process would work. And that's more for the community members who may be interested in that. I know the board knows that. And then I guess at this point, we would ask for your guidance and whether you support or agree with the direction that staff has recommended in terms of what we do with the character area plan or not moving forward in 2024 with the character area plan. Any other thoughts you have about information sessions or anything like that, certainly we would welcome at this point. This might be a good time to pause and get that feedback, and then I would turn it over to Matt to just give a few minutes of summary about some of the other land use questions that we've heard also.
Thank you, Leslie. And Commissioner Shaddock McNally, questions or comments, and then I have a few thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Leslie and Matt and Rebecca and all the staff that came up. I know you guys have put a lot of time and going up to support the community and try to provide information and to listen to all the voices. And I thought it was a tremendous effort to send out those minutes and notes and gather all the information and contact information. And I know that takes a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot on your plate. So I just want to say first, thank you for all your efforts and to be up there late at night and all the things you've done to listen to the community. And I wanted to tell you how much that meant to me, and I really appreciate that. I've heard from a lot of folks, and I know this is great that we're having these conversations to kind of help folks hear so they all can hear the same information. And I did have some folks calling me over the weekend that were concerned that if they don't do something, and I don't know if Matt's going to address this, but I just thought I'd publicly ask them their questions, that they're worried that maybe a big box store is going to go in, or some kind of business or some kind of development that they're afraid if they don't have something that things are going to happen that they won't know about, and they're concerned about this 500 feet notification. So I tried to explain the land use code currently doesn't allow for that. So I didn't know if that was some other things for the information from some of those folks, just to kind of, I think this has started a lot of fear with folks, or misinformation has been making them wonder, and now they are more interested in what is there and in place, and I don't know if we were going to also address that as well. But first, I want to say thank you for all you're doing and appreciate the conversations. And this is great, because I look as the lemonade out of the lemons. Now the community is engaged and asking questions and learning, and maybe we're making some more connections and neighbors getting to know each other, and so I figure there's some positives out of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Would you care to respond?
Yes, Matt is prepared to talk about that item, and we could do that now, or we can follow up after your direction on how we move forward. So either way, we would look to your direction.
Yeah, thank you. So before, Matt, you provide a few more details, I reckon I should offer my 2 cents on this process. Certainly want to echo the comments. A lot of staff effort. I think overall we had a productive Livermore community conversation on Thursday, February 29th with perhaps more than 250 people. So a lot of gratitude to you all, Rebecca, working really hard. Our intent was to clarify what our character area plans and all of that. And there was a lot of good discussion. There is a lot of misinformation perhaps out there, and our hope was that we could try to allay some of that misinformation and clarify the intentions of the county. Regarding what you said earlier, I just want to make sure folks are aware that the recommendation is not to do a formal character area plan, which I support, but it doesn't mean we're walking away from the Livermore community. And it's also important to reinforce the notion that the county would provide the leadership on a formal character area plan process. We don't think there's a lot of work that needs to be done to restore trust, answer any additional questions, and try to come up with a path moving forward together. So if we were to go down the road of some kind of formalized character area plan, I imagine we'll need this year to really work on building trust. So that's really, in my view, that's critical. It's county-led, and it needs to be inclusive and involve the community. And it's not the county telling the community what they want. And so we need to be more inclusive and engaging of the community, which is happening. So I wanted to make that point, please. And also regarding some of the issues that came up at the conversation, we're already beginning to have discussions, conversations with the county manager about when we might go back up there prior to April 22nd. We have a couple of dates in mind, and I think we're trying to figure out, welcome input on the various themes that came up. For example, one was Highway 287 safety, County Road 74E, road safety, those kinds of issues. So we are thinking that might be an area of focus for the first sort of subsequent community conversation. We have thrown out a Saturday date, April 13th. It depends on who's available and if that works for the community, or potentially we need to find an evening, 5:30 to 7, like we did. But again, the land use stuff and all of that would likely happen in the summertime, but we can focus on these safety issues, the water association issues, the road and bridge maintenance facility issues, and then one of the themes that came up, and that is preserving the agricultural ranching heritage up there. And I think what we talked about there is that we probably want to bring some of our Department of Natural Resources folks up, because we were reminded that the Roberts Ranch, 17,000 acres, give or take, is a conservation easement. So I think it's important to remind folks of that and what the tools are that are out there, and then also bring up our ag natural resources extension agent to talk about what we're doing in that space. So I think that's what we'll need to figure out the next 6 months or so. And the land use stuff, the development review process stuff, I think we discussed maybe starting that process sometime in the summer. Thank you for listening. Matt, you're on. Yes.
Did you want our direction now? Because I just wanted to say to staff, I support staff's recommendations. I do think we need to kind of back up a little bit and get some more of the community and inclusive process, especially what I've heard from the community, and just want to make sure, the plan is built from a place of everyone feeling they have a voice and the whole community, and I support staff recommendations. Thank you.
So I think we've provided you with clear direction, and we'll want to circle back with Commissioner Stevens, but not to take away any further the thunder from our esteemed long-range planner, principal planner, Matt Lafferty. Could you provide us with a few more details, sir?
Sure. And I think that this part of the conversation, again, Matt Lafferty, Principal Planner, Community Development Department. Thank you, Commissioners, for your kind comments. This part of the conversation is hopefully to alleviate some of the concerns that are out there with the public, to let them know that we're really not trying to pressure them into anything, and we don't forecast any kind of development at this point coming forward that would lead us to believe that there should be any issues of concern up there as far as having higher density or major development occurring in the area. Just to hit that conversation real quick, this intersection, if you look at it on our comprehensive plan, it identifies this area as forestry or natural resources land use designation, and both of those land use designations indicate a very low density type of an arrangement. Natural resources is more of a protection of the land, and the forestry is relatively large lot development. If you're ever going to get any development, 25 acre type lot density, even though the open zone district that's currently out there supports 10 acre density per unit. That's what the comprehensive plan shows. Our comprehensive plan that we talked about that night says that we should move density away from the rural areas and put them in the urban areas where we have available services and whatnot. And so we would look to this comprehensive plan if there was ever to be development in that area and weigh in about the appropriateness of a development if anybody came forward. But first, to do so, people have to look at what the underlying zoning is. And the current zoning up there is O-Open. And O-Open has a land use designation or a land density designation of 1 unit for 10 acres. And it's in a conservation development pattern. So if somebody were to develop a piece of property in that area, they get to calculate 1 unit for every 10 acres, but then they have to cluster it into smaller lots. If you had 40 acres, you'd potentially get 4 2-acre lots. And that's really it. The rest of the land is put into a perpetual status of residual land and cannot be developed. So, and in that case, it relies on a public water resource. It doesn't allow for well usage unless you have an augmented water supply through the state. And that's very difficult to get and hard to acquire if you're only doing it for a couple of lots, because that's a very expensive process. So infrastructure and roads and all these other things have an impact on whether or not that density is attainable, and whether or not it's feasible to even put that type of density in, and that's a relatively low density. So we would look at that, whatever came forward, if somebody did choose to submit an application. It's a public process. It's open to the public to see all the plans that are being proposed. Everybody gets to make comment and why or why not. Is it compatible? Is it not compatible? What are the issues associated with it? And ultimately, the approval or denial of a project rests with the commissioners, but only after a substantial public process is put into place so that the people that are living in the area can understand what's going on in their community. So we have a very low density, no motivation to develop the area up there. I would say that the conversation around a comprehensive plan and a character area plan was a comprehensive plan is very broad, there's 2 land uses there. And the idea of a character area plan was maybe to drill down a little bit more and understand the community a little bit better and what their needs might be. But at this point, there's really no need for a character area plan. There's nothing substantial happening in the area. We don't forecast that anytime soon. And so we think it'd be good to just wait this out, see what the community can resolve with the issues that are already facing them up there. And then if later on there's a reason to do something, we can talk about it at that time. But as Commissioner Kafal says, that would be an inclusive process.
So,
I was hoping, Matt, you could just touch on really quickly, too. There were some questions about more commercial development
Yeah.
potentially happening. What would it take if someone wanted to propose a commercial type of development?
Thank you, Leslie. Yes, the other thing that's identified on our comprehensive plan for the actual intersection of 74 and 287 is it was identified as a retail service node, and that's by virtue that there's already some commercial there. And so when we did the comprehensive plan, we said there's already commercial at this location, and if for some reason, because the county opened up during the comprehensive plan stage, the ability to do limited commercial in the rural areas based upon meeting a community need, is there people that need facilities in the area, like a gas station or something like that, or a place to have their cars worked on or whatnot. We identified that as a retail node. It's a retail node. And that speaks to there might be the potential for retail there in the future. That doesn't demand it. That doesn't say that we accept it. That just merely means that if there is going to be commercial in that region, it should be focused around that node. It gives us better direction on how to plan for that. But again, that would require somebody to come in and ask for a zoning change, which then you have to demonstrate compatibility and the appropriateness of the zoning and the viability of infrastructure to support it. And then you would have to back that up with a series of site plan applications and whatnot, all of which are going to be part of the public process.
thank you, colleagues. Commissioner, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I just want to thank you all for explaining that. I mean, we probably all know that, but I think it's great to state that publicly for those who might be interested in this information. And I thank you both for bringing that information today and having this on the agenda.
So
Our pleasure.
just before we go into the next topic, I also want to make sure that we're properly acknowledging a lot of work went into preparing the notes that went out, compiling all the input based on the questions that we had at the community conversation, and then the various attachments, the agenda, the memo, including the slide presentation on character area plans, as well as examples of character area plans that have been done in other parts, Wyoming, other places. I think that was very helpful, and you guys really deserve a lot of credit. In conclusion, I want to make sure it's 100% clear, based on the recommendation of staff, based on the direction that we just provided, that we need to confirm with our third commissioner, we will not be undertaking a formal character area plan development process in 2024. However, we will continue to engage with the community, and there will be meetings, community conversations along the themes that came up to try to address those issues, and we'll start getting into the more of the development and review process and zoning and open and, you know, all of that, conservation easements, ag support, summertime. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So,
Yes, that's our understanding.
oh yes, Lorinda, please.
I'll add that Commissioner Stevens is watching this online, and she concurs with holding on the plan, so it is unanimous.
Okay, that's unanimous direction. We keep moving forward. Adelante. Thank you all very much. We'll move on to the next topic.
We'll invite Matt Sura and Frank Haug to join us up here for the oil and gas update item.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Frank Haug from the County Attorney's Office, along with our special counsel, Matt Sura, who helps us on oil and gas. We wanted to run through a handful of topics today. Sorry, I sort of just jumped in there. Run through a handful of topics today about oil and gas that we wanted to make you aware of. One of them you already are aware of, which is that there was a settlement with the Krause facility that had to do with some of the violations that were going on out there. We did provide you an update on that, but that was an encouraging sign, so we were happy to see that. There's ongoing issues. One is that there is a flaring violation that we're dealing with. We have filed for party status on that. There is no date set yet that we are, so we have not yet got a date for that hearing, but we will be participating. There is, at the same time, there's been a filing to allow the flaring to take place as an exception to the state rules against flaring. We are trying to sort of have those two things happen at the same time, but so far we haven't been successful in getting those to happen together. Again, we don't have any dates set for that, but we are continuing to monitor that, so we'll continue to make sure we're participating in it. We are also, and I'm going to let Matt Sura talk about this, we had come to the board in the past about something called a 211 hearing, and Rule 211 is the rule that allows you to plug certain wells or ask that certain wells be plugged when they are low or no producing wells, and we are pursuing that, but I'm going to let Matt Sura kind of give a little bit of an update on that.
Yeah, happy to. And just to add a little bit more.
Sir, welcome. Would you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes. Name is Matt Sura. I'm special counsel on oil and gas matters. Thank you. So the settlement that was just announced a couple of weeks ago actually covers 3.5 years of violations. Many dozens of violations that had been compounding over the years for two sites, both the Krause site and the Fort Collins site, hearth fire. Another issue that came up is that they were told that they needed to shut in that hearth fire site because they were flaring illegally. And that went on for a number of months. We continued to complain, and ultimately, just within the last 3 weeks, Julie Murphy, the ECMC director, took a very rare action under her rules to require that well to be plugged or to be shut in, that is, so it wouldn't flare anymore. So that, at least, going forward, they're stopped the violation. As was mentioned, we also have a hearing about that violation and a variance to allow for flaring to continue, which I I would be surprised if that's successful. We've also just recently met with Prospect Energy just last week to talk to them about their plans for the field, and specifically 19 wells that we've identified as low producing or no producing. Some of these wells haven't produced in 30 years, and they've got no prospects to produce. And so really, it's time, and they've acknowledged that there are a few that they'd be willing to talk about plugging, but frankly, 19 wells, probably need to be plugged and abandoned. And so we're continuing to have that conversation, and ultimately, we'll likely bring some of those issues to the ECMC. And
that's accurate, and we are obligated under the rules to have those conversations. We're obligated to hold those meetings. And I know you all are aware of this, but the staff, Leah and Health and Matt Lafferty, deserve a lot of credit for a lot of the work they put into the sort of a good outcome on some of those things. So anyway, it looked like there were some questions. I was going to have Matt Sura talk about the 211 filing, which we're working on. So the next thing we were going to talk about was cumulative impacts rulemaking, but I don't know if you want to stop for questions or continue.
Frank, thank you, Matt, to both Matts. Commissioner Shaddock McNally, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry to interrupt the flow. I know I'm trying not to ask too many questions, but not only for myself, but for the public. And first off, yes, a lot of credit to everyone. This is great progress and great conversations, and something that, even a couple of years ago, we never thought we could probably come to this spot. So I want to just give you all a huge shout of gratitude. This is really important for the safety, health, and welfare of our communities. But my question is, we're going to hear about this, and this is maybe what you're going to talk about, but there are a lot of wells across Colorado, especially, it sounds like there's 19 there, that how are they going to be able to plug and abandon them themselves, or is this going to be part of that fund? Or I'm worried about how much of taxpayers are going to be left to do the cleanup on this, and I'm just curious about that.
well, you're right to be worried. There is over 1,000 wells right now within the state of Colorado that are currently on the orphaned well list, meaning that unlike the prospect wells where there's an operator still in business, these orphan wells, those are wells that were just left behind by organizations that went out of business, that filed for bankruptcy or just walked away. And we've got 1,000 on the list currently on that orphan well list, and there's probably another 2,000, frankly, that will probably be orphaned within the next couple of years. We have some funding for the next 10 years coming from the federal government, the infrastructure fund, that is being kind of doubled by funding from the industry themselves. So we've got about $20 million a year for the next 20 years to start working on those wells. It sounds like a lot, and it's going to take much more than that. So working with operators to get them to plug and abandon their wells is always going to be the best option. But in the event that they can't or won't, that is our safeguard. Again, my concern is that there's just too many wells and not enough resources for that orphan well fund.
Thank you, but right now we're currently working with them trying to find those ones we can. Okay, thank you.
So if I may, I think I have two questions before we go to the 211 cumulative rulemaking. And that is, first question is regarding the settlement that you all have described with Prospect Energy. How is that going to benefit the public health, safety, and welfare? Is it a monetary settlement? Does it require them to cease and desist? What exactly does that settlement mean, and how does it help folks to not have to breathe fumes and everything else?
A couple of things. The financial side of it was punitive. I mean, that goes to the state, and those funds get to use for other things, basically to help disproportionately affected communities as it relates to oil and gas. But in addition to the fines, they were put on notice that they had to do certain improvements to their infrastructure. Primarily, they have to look at at the Kraus facility and the other facility, they had tanks that had lids, and every time they had to make a test to determine how much product was in the tanks or whatnot, they'd have to open the lids, take a test, get a measurement, do all that stuff. They have to put in new hatches, and it will prevent them from having to open and close these things. It's going to cause less of an odor, because this was largely odor-driven, and wherever there's odor, there's the potential for air quality issues and some of those things. So it's going to improve that situation on a very small basis, but at least it's going to address the issue that's been popping up a lot up at the Kraus facility and over at the Hearthfire facility.
I appreciate that, but respectfully, I believe we've required or asked Prospect Energy to do things in the past, and they haven't necessarily complied in a timely manner. What's to ensure that this their response will be different this time? Sorry,
Well,
folks.
they've got a list of things that they have to do, and there is a time frame that they have to respond. Another thing is hydrogen sulfide has been a real concern at the Kraus facility, and they're going to have hydrogen sulfide monitors placed around there. If they don't, sorry to say, that probably comes down to Matt and Leah, again, being the ones that are pushing the issue and forcing the issue with this agency. The agency has not been as responsive as we'd like. Clearly, it's been 3.5 years where these have been ongoing violations, and they haven't held their feet to the fire. So it's really due to the good work of your county staff that this has happened at all, and it's probably going to be follow-up from the county staff as well that's going to ensure that it happens.
So that's helpful. Just a couple of more quick things, if I may. I know we need to get to the other stuff. Well, so how are we informing the neighbors of the Kraus storage tanks that these actions are being taken? How does the community know we're doing our best to to address some of these public health, safety, and welfare things?
The state put out notice to all the neighbors that were impacted by it and filed complaints in the past and whatnot. In addition to that, we posted all the materials on our oil and gas webpage so that it would be available for those to see. And we put notice out to some of the people that we know that are interested in this topic so that they could spread the word for us and help us to spread that word.
So we did directly communicate, or the state did send letters or something saying this is what we're doing and
state
spread the word? Very good, thank you. My last question for the moment is regarding the matter of capping the low-producing or not producing wells, and the meeting that occurred and the agreement to perhaps plug a few of them. If they're low-producing or no-producing, why won't they plug all 19 of them?
Well, I mean, essentially, that's the sort of disagreement about whether they're viable and can be used in the future, or if there's some economic viability for them. And that's why we've been going on trying to develop information and provide sort of, arguments or positions about why, in fact, it's not financially or economically viable to continue to have these things in operation. But that's the crux of the argument, is whether you can still make money on them or not.
Well, thank you. I think in the interest of time, perhaps we can move on to the next topic, and if time allows, we can come back to, I see at least, there seems to be an interest in providing a little bit more detail, but why don't we go on to the 211 conversation?
Well, and that is what we were talking about. The Rule 211 is the capping, and I put them together, so that's my fault. But the next topic was this cumulative impacts rulemaking, which is something that we've been there's several rulemakings going on right now. One of them is cumulative impacts. The other one has to do with tracking flow lines. So I'm going to let Matt Sura talk about those two things quickly.
It's actually a really good segue, because the ECMC, Energy and Carbon Management Commission, cumulative impacts rulemaking is to address cumulative impacts of the oil and gas industry combined with, existing impacts from other operations. But one thing that they put in this latest draft, I think, really speaks to this issue. the operator, Prospect Energy, put forward a proposal to convert one or many, actually several of its wells from currently producing in the Muddy Formation, where some of these wells have been producing for the last 100 years, to the Codell Formation, which is a real gassy formation, and it would, in all intents and purposes, create a new well. And staff said, wait a minute, we don't think that that's a viable option here. This is really going to be a new well and new impacts, and it's in the middle of a neighborhood. This is going to be near the Hearthfire neighborhood. And again, this was about almost a year and a half ago. ECMC agreed. And in fact, ECMC is taking that notion that these old wells can't be retrofitted into brand new wells, either by digging them more deeply or by recompleting them into a new formation, until they do a full assessment of the location, of the surface location. And so we already have that in our regulations at the county, but ECMC is contemplating doing the same thing at the state level, which will give us additional protection from the idea that these old fields can be rejuvenated somehow and brought back to life. Particularly in the case of Prospect Energy, many of those locations are in the wrong place at this point. You know, that it's been 100 years and neighborhoods have built around them, and it's no longer a viable place for an industrial activity like that. So that's one of the issues that's addressed in the cumulative impacts rulemaking. Another really big topic that the county has been involved in for now more than a couple of years is nitrogen oxides, and making sure that the oil and gas industry is doing what it can to reduce those ozone precursors from their industry, and looking at it holistically. What is their responsibility as individual operators, but also as an industry? And so those are the conversations we're going to continue to have through April, when this rulemaking is expected to wrap up.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, colleagues. Commissioner Shaddock McNally, any further questions or comments, please?
Just thank you. And just, I'm thinking back to that first year when we worked so hard on the oil and gas regulations. I know it was a lot of work, but obviously we all together created some great policy. If now it's kind of looked at the state as something and really important to see that it was impactful, or kind of having the impact that we wanted to kind of protect these neighborhoods that now have built there. So I just want to say great news, and I appreciate all the work that you and Matt and Lee and everyone's done, because we're more engaged at the state level, and I think that's helping maybe drive policy there too, maybe, I feel like, because it seems like some of the things we keep bringing up has been drawing their attention. So I just wanted to just express my gratitude. I'm really glad to hear some of these conversations are happening and some of this progress. It's really about our communities and their health and safety, and so I just want to say thank you.
Yes, me too. I agree, and thank you.
And just to wrap up maybe briefly, you know, so we're working on the cumulative impacts rulemaking. We'll continue to be a part of that, and we're really pushing on the air quality issues in that, and trying to understand how the interplay between the Air Quality Commission, the Oil and Gas Commission, which are two different agencies but overlap to some extent. There's also this rulemaking about flow lines and mapping the flow lines. We're also participating in that and trying to make sure that that's done. There's various other legislation that we're tracking and working with our own internal legislative liaison staff to do that. And in fact, the other thing we were going to mention is just that Loveland is undergoing a process of rewriting their regulations, and they're largely, I think, going to model theirs after ours. And so we've done a lot of work on this area in the last handful of years, and we're seeing some fruit bearing some fruit on a lot of that stuff. But there's a lot of more to do. But we're tracking a lot of different things.
Great. Well done, team. Thank you. Thank you all very much. I believe we can now move on to our third discussion item.
Yes, and while we're in transition here, I will mention also, and I'm sure you're aware too, but there is a work session scheduled next week to talk about some funding options around oil and gas and air quality and housing. So that may be a continuation in some ways of this conversation. So, and then now we have joining us Dalen Figgs and Cindy Claggett to talk about the Horsetooth Marina contract. So.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'll go ahead and start, and Cindy can jump in where it need be. But I just wanted to make you aware that staff are going to bring forward the Inlet Bay Marina License Agreement for the marina at Horsetooth Reservoir. And it is on the consent agenda for tomorrow's admin matters. And really today is to answer any questions and to see if we want to keep it on the consent agenda for tomorrow. So as a reminder, this is a 10-year license with 2 5-year renewal periods. And the process really began with a pretty extensive public process called a request for information, really seeking input from the community on what they would like to see in a marina. And the RFP was then really built around a lot of those ideas, as well as ideas staff, the commissioners brought forward in various conversations. A core team that consisted of DNR staff, folks from purchasing, Parks Advisory Board, Bureau of Reclamation worked together to build the RFP, review and finally select a vendor for the marina. It happens to be the same vendor who's been there for over 20 years. So a continuation of a partnership that started long before us. The important factors that we negotiated successfully are really those key things we talked about with the Board of County Commissioners in past around transparency, how the lottery system would work for the transfer of slips and moorings. We do have a lottery system we have in place for this concessionaire as well. There's no longer the allow or the sale or transfer of a boat slip with the sale of a boat. All of those that are available would go back into the lottery system. And we also were able to negotiate a higher percentage of gross revenue to 6% by the Department of Natural Resources. And so the one difference between Carter and Inlet Bay is at Inlet Bay, we have no facilities that the county has paid for over the years. So at Carter, if you remember, I believe a store and the shop, maintenance shop, were built by the county. That's not the case at Horsetooth. All the infrastructure that's there was built by Inlet Bay Marina over the past years, which is why it's a little bit different percent of gross. And Cindy can remind us what is built into the Carter Lake if that's of interest. You want to add that in, Cindy?
Thank you, Dalen. Welcome, Cindy.
Thank you. Again, Cindy Claggett, District Manager for Natural Resources. So the Carter Lake one, as Dalen mentioned, is all of the structures that are on land are owned by Larimer County. So we've built in a gross revenue percentage for them to increase to cover some of those, but it starts off lower and then goes up to 7%.
Thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
I don't think you mentioned that we also went through an RFI before the RFP process to try and get some information from the public to see if there was any other ideas. Does it need to be a marina? Those sorts of things.
And there was an extensive community engagement process, wasn't there?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is great news to find out that some of the points that were important for us were successfully negotiated. I know from doing ride-alongs and listening and kind of being around that area and listening to some of the folks I know that have boats and use that frequently, was some of the challenges for your staff trying to just communicate and work and manage that area, because it is kind of a source of challenges at times, especially when it's busy. Were some of those processes or issues or challenges negotiated or solved or communicated in this contract? Or do you feel like the concerns you had or some of the challenges you were seeing, do you feel like those have been addressed and into this contract, and there's maybe a process or mechanism now for more communication, more collaboration? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, that's a great question, Commissioner, and thank you for that. And I think the short answer is yes. We went from a very short, simple contract to one that's multiple pages and contains a lot of conversation around our interaction with the concessionaire and the licensee. For example, formal inspections do still require notice, but we can enter the marina at any time for any cause that we see. We'll interact with them much more frequently. Of course, with the lottery system, we'll have a complete list of who the slip renters or owners are, along with the boats they have, and we'll be able to monitor that. We'll be able to monitor, just the natural sort of attrition of slip ownership and understand kind of the workings of the marina much better. But yes, we'll have a much stronger presence. We'll also, as a department, make every effort to be present more often and be seen in that area to make sure, really just helping our partner out, the marina licensee. They're really a partner of ours, and just really helping them out where we can as well, building a much stronger foundation.
Well, thank you, and to everyone, well done. Just appreciate it, and I really appreciate the public engagement with the request for information, too. That's really great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I don't have any questions, and unless there's a different opinion, I think we can keep the matter on the consent agenda.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I agree with staff's recommendation. I think that's fine.
Thank you. So.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work, folks.
Appreciate it. Enjoy your
Have a
afternoon.
nice day. Hope you get out on the water. What else you got there?
Well, this last item, I guess, can be a bit of a blended community development and SIPR update. Really, it's just to see if you have any questions about the hearing this afternoon. Jenny is here. It sounds like it should be that we have two items that will likely remain on consent. You never know, of course, but at this point, we're not hearing from the public or anybody that there's likely to be a request to change that. So if you have any further questions about the process of the hearing, we can answer those questions now. Otherwise, I think we can probably wrap up from my standpoint.
I don't have any questions, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you to staff. It just really is nice to have the system and have this beforehand, and seemed pretty straightforward to me. So I don't have any questions, and just really appreciate what you do to support us.
Yes, I too am fine, hoping, fingers crossed. There was a memo, I think, from one of the planners, Jared, about some change to make sure the names that were listed. So I think I understand that. So I don't have any questions. Is there anything else you have, Madam Director, CPERS Director?
And there is nothing else at this point.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
enjoy your little bit of time back this afternoon. Thank you.
At 2:18 p.m., we are adjourned. Thank you, Justine. Take good care.
commissioners meeting? Yeah.
Give us just about 20 more minutes, and we'll open the doors and get started.
Well, thank you.
Testing. Oh, that doesn't sound good. Can you hear me, Justine?
Try again, sorry.
Super.